I am starting a new section where I read Carl Shaw's historical bathroom readers, and we are going to start with this one: Five People Who Died During Sex and Other 100 Other Terribly Tasteless Lists. There are nine total chapters, and each video is going to be a single chapter. And that is how we're going to do this. Okay. Chapter one is choice cuts. So let's go to chapter one. And I'm not going to read the introduction. Five people who died during sex. Chapter one, choice cuts. Goat's testicles to go. 10 national delicacies. Cena molida contains roasted mashed cockroaches. Fried, roasted, or boiled guinea pig, Ecuador. Rat meat sausages, Philippines. Dissected petrified deer's penis, China. Boudog, goat broiled inside a bag made from a carefully cut and tied goat skin. The goat is either barbecued over an open fire or cooked with a blowtorch, and it's in Mongolia. Monkey toes, Indonesia. Lox tongues, England in the 16th century is the footnote. Salted horse meat sandwiches, Netherlands. Durian fruit has a fragrance identical to that of a rotting corpse, Southeast Asia. Khachapuri, the traditional cheese pie of the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. In 1995, authorities closed down a bakery whose specialty was khachapuri when it emerged that the pies were being baked in the Tbilisi morgue. Talk about dead eatery. All right. Food for thought. 10 great gourmands. Emperor Eglabalus. Even in the age of culinary surprises, the emperor shocked his guests with the novelty of dishes on offer at his 12-hour banquets by serving up camel brain, camel brains, the combs from live chickens, peacocks and nightingale tongues, bullets' livers, flamingos and thrushes' brains, parrots, pheasants and peacocks' heads, and sows' udders. He also served his guests exact replicas of the food he was eating made out of wood, ivory, pottery, or stone. The guests were required to indulge his practical joke and continue on eating. He ate as Romans often did, reclining on couches or scattered with lilies and violets, feasting between bouts of self-induced vomiting and demanding sex in between courses. A couple of dinner guests once complimented him on the flower arrangement in the middle of the imperial table, and carelessly conjectured how pleasant it might be to be smothered in the scent of roses. The emperor obliged. The next time they sat down to eat with him, he had them smothered to death under several tons of petals. John Montague, fourth Earl of Sandwich. In 1762, Britain's first Lord of the Admiralty, a notorious gambler, gave his name to the world's best known convenience food when he placed a slice of beef in between two pieces of bread so he could carry on eating at the gaming table without the distraction of greasy fingers. It was not, however, for the peerless snack that Montague became the talk of the taverns. When he wasn't gambling or helping lose the Revolutionary War, Montague was caricatured by press as a notorious philanderer who was said to spend his evenings in his private garden of lust, featuring hinges pruned to resemble a woman's private parts. King George IV, the poet Leigh Hunt, was sent to prison for libel when he dared to suggest the Prince of Wales was overweight. But Hunt was only stating the obvious. The new king, who was fond of hosting 100-course feasts, got his reign off to a flying start at his coronation banquet, when he served up to his guest 7,442 pounds of beef, 7,133 pounds of veal, and 2,474 pounds of mutton, and an unweighed mountain of lamb and poultry. This orgy of conspicuous consumption was so offended his subjects that the coronation banquets were banned forthwith. By early middle age, George had a 50-inch waist, and it took 3 hours to squeeze him into the royal corset, and a pulley system was required to enable him to mount a horse. Even on his deathbed, his appetite was undiminished. Shortly before expiring from cardiac and respiratory problems at the age of 67, he ordered 2 pigeons, 3 steaks, a bottle of wine, a glass of champagne, 2 glasses of port, and a glass of brandy. King Louis the 18th, the French Bourbon king, were all thought to have suffered from a family of overeating disorder. Before he lost his appetite in his head, the ample Louis XVI, known to his courtiers as the fat pig, was such a prolific gourmand that his gut was rumored to be infested with a giant tapeworm. The younger brother of King Louis XVIII was the largest of all the Bourbons, though he thought he could deflect attention from his enormous girth by dressing in diamond-studded clothes. In the last years of his reign, he suffered from a variety of illness, including gout, and he became completely disabled. He was in such a state of physical decay that one evening in 1823, as his valets were removing the king's shoes, a gouty toe accidentally came away with his sock. Number 5, William Buckland. In 1824, British vicar and geologist who became the first person to identify a dinosaur fossil when he was published in the Notice on the Megalosaurus, or the Great Fossil Lizard of Stonesfield. Buckland spent a lifetime of indulging bizarre gastronomic experiences. He dined on rodents, insects, crocodile, hedgehog, mole, and roast joint of bear and puppy. He once boasted that he was prepared to eat anything organic, although he confessed that he could not be tempted to try a second helpings of stewed mole or bluebottle, a common housefly. Buckland made culinary history when he ate the embalmed heart of King Louis XIV. The organ, stolen from the king's tomb during the French Revolution, changed hands several times until it found its way into a snuff box owned by Buckland's friend Lord Harcourt. Buckland noted later that the heart probably would have tasted better if it was served with gravy made from the blood of a marmoset. James Diamond, Jim Brady. The millionaire railway tycoon tried to eat his way through an estimated $12 million fortune in the early 20th century, mostly at fashionable New York City hotels. Started the day with a breakfast of hominy grits, eggs, cornbread, muffins, pancakes, lamb chops, fried potatoes, beefsteak, and a gallon of orange juice, and a mid-morning snack of 2 or 3 dozen oysters, was followed by a lunch of clams, oysters, boiled lobsters, deviled crabs, and a joint of beef and various pies. Afternoon tea compromised of a large plate of seafood, washed down with several quarts of lemonade. Diamond Jim's appetite reached a peak at dinner when he consumed 2 or 3 dozen oysters, 6 crabs, several bowls of green turtle soup, 6 or 7 lobsters, 2 ducks, a double serving of turtle meat, a sirloin steak, vegetables, and orange juice, followed by several plates of cakes and pies, and a 2 pound box of candy. The owner of his favorite restaurant, Charles Rector's, an exclusive establishment on Broadway, described Diamond Jim as his best 25 customers. Um, Number 7, Giacchino Rossini. The life and works of the great Italian composer were greatly influenced by food. Di Tatti Palpiti, the most popular opera aria of its time, was familiar known as the rice area because Rossini dashed it off while waiting for his Rosito to cook one day in Venice. Similarly, Rossini Rossini is said to have composed the aria Nequi al afano al pianto in Cinderella in less than 25 minutes in a tavern in Rome while drinking with friends. By his mid-30s, he had written 39 operas and was the most acclaimed musician of his day, but then he suddenly went into early retirement and spent the rest of his life throwing dinner parties at his home in Paris. Rossini claims to have shed tears only 3 times in his life. The first time over his first opera, the second when he heard Paganini play the violin, and the third when his picnic lunch fell overboard on a boating trip. Rossini Rossini is now well known for the steak named after him, created at the Café Anglias in Paris. Number 8, Charles Darwin. The great scientist displayed an early taste for natural history as a student at Cambridge University when he presided over the Glutton Club, which met weekly in order to seek out and eat strange flesh. They dined on hawk and bittern, but after eating a particularly stringy old brown owl, they gave up and elected to get drunk on port instead. When Darwin set sail on the Beagle, he was happy to tuck into armadillos, which taste and look like duck, an unnamed 20-pound chocolate covered rodent that he said was the best I ever tasted. One Christmas, when he realized that the fowl he was eating was extremely rare, Petite, he jumped up in the middle of the meal and tried to scrape together the remaining wing, head, and neck for experiments. Number 9, Sylvester Graham. Inventor of the graham cracker, he believed that all health problems could be traced to sex or diet, and spent a lifetime crusading against masturbation and poor eating habits. Graham was mainly concerned with the carnal passions provoked by meat eating, theorizing that the stomach, as the major organ of the body, was also the seat of all illness, and that hunger and sexual desire were a drain on the immune system. Graham's cure all regime was very simple: exercise to help prevent nocturnal emissions, a proper diet to facilitate regular bowel movements, and sexual moderation. Once a month for married couples was enough. His lecture to young men was written in 1834, was the first of a whole genre of medical tracts on the perils of masturbation, were said to lead to a variety of health problems, including a body full of disease and a mind of ruins. His theories influenced a generation of diet experts, including John Harvey Kellogg, inventor of the cornflake and who also worked and a nut house for the wealthy. Number 10, President William Howard Taft, morbidly obese at 320 pounds when he came into office. Taft's sole dietary concession was to give up bacon because it gave him heartburn. He owned a special bathtub big enough for 4 average-sized men, but got stuck in it on his inauguration day and had to be pried out. All right, serial killers. 10. Food-related deaths. In A Domini 54, Roman Emperor Claudius chokes on a feather he has been using to tickle his gullet to induce vomiting at a banquet. In 1135, King Henry I dies after eating a souffle of lampreys, an eel-like fish. In 1190, Genghis Khan kills his brother in an argument over a fish. In 1580, Tsar Ivan the Terrible enjoys tipping boiling hot soup over the head of his court jester. When the jester screams in pain, Ivan runs a sword through him. In 1593, Christopher Kit Marlowe, the second most gifted Elizabethan playwright after Shakespeare, is stabbed to death through the eye in a tavern during an argument over the bill. 1616, Francis Bacon, English scientist and statesman, dies inventing frozen food. While traveling in his coach one winter's day, he suddenly realized that food might be preserved by freezing. While stuffing a dead chicken with snow, he catches a fatal chill. In 1818, Abraham Lincoln's mother dies after drinking milk supplied by the family dairy cow, which had recently dined on poisonous mushrooms. 1941, Sherwood Anderson, writer, dies after accidentally swallowing a toothpick while enjoying nibbles at a cocktail party on an ocean liner bound for Brazil. 1978, Frenchman Nicole Carrier admits to killing both his wives because they were poor cooks. The 54-year-old is sentenced to 8 years in jail after killing the second for cooking him an overdone roast. 17 years earlier, he had broken his first wife's neck after she served him an undercooked meal. In the passing sentence, the judge sympathizes with Carrier. Good cooking, he agrees, is an important part of married life. In 1994, Peter Wheeler, a German filmgoer, is beaten to death by ushers in a Bond cinema because he brought his own popcorn. All right, 12 faddish diets. Benito Mussolini lived mostly on milk, drinking up to 3 quarts a day to subdue his dreadful stomach ache. When he met Hitler, however, he was careful to eat alone so as not to reveal the strange diet because he thought it was a bit unfascist. Henry Ford took to eating weed sandwiches every day. When he heard that the American scientist and dietitian George Washington Carver did the same. In 1644, the Danish author Theodore Reinking wrote a book lamenting the diminished fortunes of the Danes after their defeat by their neighbor Sweden in the 30 Years' War. It offended Sweden so much that he was imprisoned for life. After several years in jail, however, he was given a straight choice: eat your book or lose your head. He chose to eat his words. In exile, the Ugandan dictator Idi Amin was known as Dr. Jaffa, an affectionate title deriving from his excessive consumption of Jaffa oranges. A former cannibal, Amin became a fruitarian in his twilight years. He had been a reluctant cannibal, though, he said. He found human flesh too salty. Hitler became a vegetarian in 1931 when his doctors put him on a meatless diet to cure him of flatulence and a chronic stomach disorder, but he often lapsed. According to his cook, he was partial to sausage and stuffed pigeons. The ancient sailors of Spain and Portugal regularly ate rat meat on long voyages. The crew aboard the Magellan ship, during his ill-fated attempt to circumnavigate the world, sold rats to each other for 1 ducat each. By the way, that is $12 in today's currency. A ducat is a troy ounce of silver, which is basically a half an ounce in today's currency. An 11th century order of monks, the Cathars, frowned on all forms of procreation. They practiced frequent and savage flagellation and sodomy, neither of which they considered sinful because neither involved the risk of pregnancy. The Cathars were also vegetarians on the grounds that animals were produced by sexual intercourse and that their flesh was therefore sinful. They did, however, eat plenty of fish in the mistaken belief that fish do not copulate. A craze for swallowing live goldfish began at Harvard College in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1939 when a student, Lothrop Withington, enjoyed a fishy snack to win a $10 bet. His friends told the college newspaper about it, and the Boston newspapers picked up the story. Throughout the spring of 1939, the U.S. goldfish population nosedived as students all over the country vied to outdo each other in the consumption of finny comestibles. An unofficial record for the goldfish swallowing was established 43 in one sitting. Although the teenager who accomplished this was kicked out of his school for conduct unbecoming of a student. Ernest Hemingway wrote most of his works on a diet of peanut butter sandwiches. In 1994, fisherman Rento Arganza was rescued after spending several days of sleep at sea, clinging to a buoy after his boat capsized off the Philippines. He survived by eating his underpants. Sir Athol Oakley, 1900 to 1987, was Britain's first professional wrestling baronet. Sir Athol was short for a wrestler at 5'9", however very stout, having built up his body by religiously drinking 11 pints of milk a day for 3 years. This dedicated diet was adopted on the advice of his idol, a giant wrestler called Hackenschmidt, who later confessed to Sir Anthol that the quantity of milk had in fact been a misprint. The correct amount was only 1 pint per day. Scornful reports that his people did not have enough to eat. The doctor Nikolai Siascu complained that the Romanians ate too much and introduced the revolutionary Cusco diet, a scientific regimen mysteriously free of the protein-rich staples Romanians miss the most, especially meat and dairy products. To show that production targets were actually being met, he also staged visits to the countryside where he filmed inspecting displays of meat and fruit. Film crews alone knew that the food was mostly made from wood and polystyrene. History's 10 least appealing dinner dates. Mary Mallon, also known as Typhoid Mary. Mallon was the world's most notorious disease carrier. In her captivity as a New York cook before World War I, she was personally responsible for 53 separate outbreaks of typhoid involving 1,300 people, which resulted in at least 3 deaths. She regularly changed her name to confuse health officials. She spent the last 23 years of her life detained in quarantine in a state hospital, protesting her innocence until the end. Anne Boleyn, the second wife to King Henry VIII, had a distressing habit first observed by her coronation bouquet of vomiting between courses. She employed a lady-in-waiting whose job it was to hold up a sheet and catch the royal spew whenever the queen looked like she was about to throw up. Emperor Shi Hu of China, AD 334 through 349. Banquets in the imperial court were a trial for the emperor's guests, but particularly bad news for the ladies in his harem. He would select a concubine, have her beheaded, and then serve her cooked torso to his visitors. King to impress Shi Hu also insisted on passing the uncooked head around a platter for his guest inspection so he could prove that he hadn't sacrificed his ugliest mistress. Alright, Tsar Peter the Great. Said to have had the table manners of a baptized bear, the Tsar liked to trample across bouquet tables, treading on dishes and cutlery as he went with his unwashed feet. Russia's first book of mealtime etiquette wasn't published until several years after his death. It was written by the Romanov Empress Anne, who had a revolutionary idea about good manners and wanted to keep up with the European standards of refined taste, entitled The Honest Mirror of Youth. A slim volume advised discerning Russians on how to use a knife and a fork, when not to spit on the table, not to jab their elbows into their seating partners during formal dinners, and not to place their feet in guest dishes while standing on the dining table. Dr. Samuel Johnson, the literary giant, who had a ferocious appetite coupled with appalling table manners, was always guaranteed to break the ice at dinner parties. Tourette syndrome. Johnson's favorite dish was a vast pudding containing beefsteaks, kidneys, oysters, larks, and mushrooms. According to his biographer, James Boswell, he swilled and gorged and stuffed himself until sweat ran down his cheeks and his veins stood out of his forehead. Johnson's eating habits were so disturbing that sometimes when he was invited to dine with some prominent person, he would eat behind a screen. Miss Beeton. Her famous book of cookery and household management, regarded as the housewife's culinary Bible for years after it was first published in 1861, contains several potentially lethal recipes. King Louis XIV of France. Although best known portraits of Louis XIV portray him as a dapper little man, in old age he became morbidly obese. In his later years, he struggled to eat because his doctors, while removing several of his bad teeth, had accidentally broken his upper jaw, smashed his platelet. From then on, Louis always had difficulty chewing, and bits of food often came down his nose. Wow. Juan Perón. By the time the Argentinian dictator's wife Eva died of cancer in 1952, an eminent pathologist had been on standby for 2 weeks to embalm her. With Eva barely dead, he quickly filled her veins with alcohol and glycerin, which kept her organs intact and made her skin appear almost translucent. Juan planned to have her housed in a giant new mausoleum, but was forced to suddenly flee the country, and the body disappeared for several years. In 1971, however, Juan and Eva were touchingly reunited, and from that day on, Eva's corpse was always present at the Perón family dinner table. Jean Bedel Bokassa, the cannibal former president of the Central African Republic, once served political opponents up to unwitting visiting dignitaries as roast beef. Idi and Sarah Amin. In 1999, London restaurateur Sarah Amin, the ex-wife of former Ugandan dictator Idi, was found to be running a kitchen with a heavy and active cockroach and mouse infestation, and her establishment was closed down by health officials. She was, at least, a better fellow dining prospect than her husband. Guests at the home of Uganda's president were treated to some unscheduled entertainment by their host one evening in August 1972, when, between courses, Amin suddenly vanished into the kitchen and returned with the frozen head of his former commander-in-chief, Brigadier Hussein. Amin screamed abuse and threw silverware at the head, and then asked his guests to leave. 10 historic drunks. Noah. According to the Old Testament, Noah was the first person to ever get drunk. King Scorpion the First of Egypt, aka the Scorpion King. The pharaohs loved their wine. In 3500 BC, His Royal Highness's cadaver was entombed with several 700 bottles of resin-infused hooch to help ease his journey into the afterlife. Socrates, aka Socrates, 469 to 339 BC. The great philosopher had a legendary ability to hold his liquor and would continue to philosophize when everyone else at the symposium had long since passed out or gone home. Alexander the Great, 356 BC to 323 BC. The Macedonian king who ruled an empire stretching from Greece to India was in his lifetime famous for his marathon drinking sessions. As for his military conquests, during one of Alexander's drinking contests, 35 men died. During another one, he killed one of his best friends with a spear. His close friend Hephaestion expired after drinking half a gallon of wine for breakfast, and Alexander dropped dead after a drinking contest at the age of 32. What a way to go out with a bang. Pope Benedict XII, circa 1334 to 42. The pontiff was such a hard boozer that the expression drunk as a pope became popular in his lifetime. Selim II, Sultan of the Ottomans, 1566 to 1574, also known as Selim the Salt. He could drink a bottle of Cyprus wine without drawing a breath, and when he ran out of his favorite drink, someone suggested he capture Cyprus to replenish his stocks. Selim agreed and massacred 30,000 Cypriot Christians in the process. Empress Catherine I, Tsarina of Russia, 1725 to 1727. While suffering through her 2-year reign in a drunken haze, she once survived an assassination attempt. Too drunk to realize anything had happened, she was reviewing a guard's regiment when a bullet flew past her ear and struck an innocent bystander dead. The empress moved on without flinching. Ludwig von Beethoven, 1770 to 1827. The composer died of hepatic cirrhosis of the liver because of the result of alcoholism at the age of 57. Before he expired, he cheerfully announced, "Wine is both necessary and good for me." President Andrew Johnson, U.S. President, 1865 to 1969. He was apparently drunk at his swearing in as vice president to Lincoln, or 1865 to 1869. I mean, he was apparently drunk at his swearing in as vice president to Lincoln, and his acceptance speech was rambling and largely incoherent. He claimed later that he had been taking alcohol medicine prescribed for a cold. He didn't make his own inaugural address. When the U.S. Chief Justice was sent to tell him that Lincoln was dead and that he was now president, they found him trying to shake off a terrible hangover. Johnson took the oath of office as required, but then fell asleep and had to be dressed and carried to the White House. Sir Winston Churchill, 1874 to 1965. Britain's great wartime leader began each day with a glass of Riesling with his breakfast. Then he kept himself topped up with whiskey until the early hours of the following day. A doctor attending him after he was knocked down by a car in New York in 1931 actually issued a medical note that his convalescence necessitates the use of alcohol spirits, especially at meal times, specifying 250 cc per day as the minimum. Although it wrecked his health, he liked to brag, I have taken out more out of alcohol than alcohol has taken out of me. All right, hang on. Yes. 10. Exclusive beverages. 3 penis wine. One of several multi-penis wines produced in China is made from 1 part seal penis, 1 part dog penis, and 4 parts deer penis. It is said to be an elixir of great repute for flagging lovers. It is also allegedly effective cure for anemia, shingles, and memory loss. The more you know. The world's most exclusive beverage is made from a coffee bean that is passed through the digestive tract of a cat. The excretions of the palm civet cat are collected from around the coffee plantations of Indonesia and are sold at around $75 a cup. Luckily for coffee drinkers, the palm civet only ingests only the very ripest beans. Then internal fermentation by enzymes add a unique flavor and removes the source of coffee's natural bitterness. The beans are then passed whole and unsullied to the cat's poo. Number 3. The Yukon Territory in Canada is home of the sour toe cocktail, which has only 2 ingredients: an amputated human toe and a spirit of your choice. The only rule is you can drink it fast, you can drink it slow, but your lips have got to touch the toe. The original artifact discovered in a disused log cabin by a Mountie in 1973 was used in the drink for more than 700 times before it was accidentally swallowed by a miner. The tomb of Mausoleus, one of the 7 wonders of the world, was destroyed by an earthquake. Built was built in 353 BC in Turkey by Queen Artemisia on the death of her husband, King Mausoleus. The king's body was to have been placed in the tomb, but there was a last minute change of plans. His wife had him cremated, then she poured the ashes into a goblet of wine and drank a lot. We memorialize Mausoleus today with our word mausoleum. Cow urine is sold in India as a sedative, a cure for cancer, AIDS, tuberculosis, and as an antiseptic aftershave. In 1885, the U.S. Army captain and part-time naturalist John Burke published a detailed description of the urine dance of the Zuni Indians of New Mexico. Burke related how he had been privileged to witness this unique ritual, which involved a dozen Zuni Indians dancing around the fire while drinking several gallons of fresh urine. When the Zuni invited their guests to participate in a similar ceremony, but this time involving human excrement, Burke made his excuses and left. After the Great Fire of London in 1666, the remains of the former Dean of St. Paul, John Colet, were rescued from the cathedral where they had lain since 1509. Although protected by a lead-lined coffin, it was noted by 2 gentlemen called Wild and Greatorex that Dean's remains had become cooked, and his preserving fluids had dissolved into a soupy substance. They sampled the soup and declared that it only tasted of iron. When Britain's great naval hero, Admiral Horatio Nelson, died, his corpse was placed in a keg of brandy to preserve it on the long journey home. Although Nelson's body bubbled away in it for days, that didn't prevent his crew from drinking the spirits later. The Kakoma tribe of Peru drank the ground up bones of deceased relatives in a fermented brew. They believed that it was much better for the dead to be inside of a warm friend than outside in the cold earth. Adolf Hitler once attempted to cure his chronic flatulence by drinking machine gun oil. 10. Alternative uses for Coca-Cola. As a spermicide in India, as a pesticide in India, as a toilet bowl cleaner, as a windshield washer, as a rust spot remover, as a bloodstain remover, as a grease stain remover, as a sink cleaner, as a meat tenderizer, as a wallpaper paste remover. Waiting for a grill like you. 10 human recipes. Adolf Duguer, a master butcher in the 1870s, was fired by a driving ambition to make his sausages famous all over America. Duguer's dream came true when he was arrested and tried for murder of his wife Louisiana after disposing of her corpse by melting it down in one of his giant vats and incorporating her into his sausage production line. For 2 years after Duguer's conviction, sausage sales in Illinois and neighboring Michigan hit an all-time low. The British explorer Captain James Cook wrote in his journals about the cannibalistic habits of some of the natives he encountered on his trips to the South Seas. Ironically, he ended his days as a Hawaiian buffet. All that Cook's men could find of him after he had been killed and dismembered at a traditional Haianu ceremony at Kilakiku were a few bones and some salted flesh. In 1991, Wang Guang, owner of the White Temple restaurant in China, built up a huge following for his heavily spiced Szechuan style dumplings. Over a 4 year period, the exotic fillings were supplied by Guang's brother, who worked as an assistant at the local crematorium. The secret ingredient of the White Temple menu, human flesh, was exposed after police were tipped off by the parents of a young girl who had died in a road accident. When they came to cremate her body, they discovered that parts of it were missing. Number 4. The Carib Indians of the West Indies, encountered by Columbus, were the world's connoisseurs of human Huete cuisine. Caribs bred children expressly for edible purposes. The male children were castrated because it improved the flavor. According to the Caribs, the best bits on the human being were the palms of the hands, the fingers, and the toes. Columbus noted that the Caribs considered the French to be the very tastiest people. Marco Polo noted in 1275 that the people of Southeast Asia ate the feet of their captives, believing them to be the most savory food in the world. When the Chinese famine of 206 BC killed half the population, human flesh became the staple diet. The taste for people, however, lingered on long after the famine conditions had gone. During the Tang Dynasty, the late ninth and 10th centuries, cannibalism was permitted by law and human flesh was sold publicly in street markets. The Tartar hordes that swept across Europe in 1242 were particularly fond of girls. Appetizing young maidens were issued as rations to army officers, while common soldiers chewed on the tough flesh of older women. Breast meat was regarded as the finest tidbit and was reserved for the prince's table. Fijian cannibals were acquired to the taste of hanks and salted human flesh, a variation on European or American chewing tobacco. During World War II, the British Minister of Food, Lord Woolton, carefully considered a but finally rejected a plan proposed by his government scientists to feed the country on black pudding made from a surplus of blood bank donations. In 1977, the U.S. government staged the official grand opening ceremony of their new Department of Agriculture staff canteen, which was attended by Robert Berglund. The Agricultural Secretary, Mr. Berglund, unveiled a brass plaque naming the canteen the Alfred Packer memorial dining facilities after one of America's most famous 19th century frontiersmen. A few months later, the plaque was removed when somebody remembered that the late Mr. Packard had been chiefly famous for killing and eating 5 Colorado gold prospectors in the 1870s. Gluttons for punishment 20 world eating records. 50 hot dogs in 12 minutes. 57 cow brains, 18 pounds, in 10 minutes. 3.5 pounds of cooked dogs in 18 minutes and 10 seconds. 100 yards of spaghetti in 28 seconds. 12 slugs in 2 minutes. 28 cockroaches in 4 minutes. 60 earthworms in 3 minutes and 6 seconds. 100 live maggots in 5 minutes, 29 seconds. 2 pounds of eels in 32 seconds. 144 snails in 11 minutes and 30 seconds. 12 bananas, including skins, in 4 minutes and 14 seconds. 13 raw eggs in 1.4 seconds. 65 hard-boiled eggs in 6 minutes and 40 seconds. 7 quarter-pound sticks of salted butter in 5 minutes. 5.75 pounds of asparagus spears in 10 minutes. 6 pounds, 9 ounces of cabbage in 9 minutes. 1 gallon, 9 ounces of vanilla ice cream in 12 minutes. 6 pounds of tin spam in 12 minutes. 3 onions in a single minute. God, you're making me cry. And 4 32-ounce bowls of mayonnaise in 8 minutes. God, that's a lot of mayo. Take yourself to the Mayo Clinic. Get help. With that, we are done with chapter 1. Choice cuts. And the book, again, is 5 People Who Died During Sex and 100 Other Terribly Tasteless Lists. You can buy this for less than $10 on Amazon and follow along. Please do like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.